we go. We're ready to go.
Okay, we'll call to order the Monday, May 8th meeting of the Bicycle Pedestrian Advisory Committee for the town of Corte Madera. Would you like to conduct roll call?
Sure.
I can do it too to make sure.
Okay.
Chris, go ahead. I'll get
Okay. Chair Ravazio,
Here.
Vice Chair McPherson,
Here.
Committee Member Garza,
Here.
Committee Member Longinati,
Here.
Committee Member Madden,
Here.
and then Committee Member Knopf-Steiger. Not
Okay.
here. Okay.
Okay. Thank you very much. If you can join me in a salute to the flag. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America, to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Okay, so we have Dimitri here from Public Works. He's going to be helping us this evening. Our first item is open time for public comment, and this is anything regarding something that is not on the agenda. Is there any member of the public in attendance tonight who wants to speak on an item not on the agenda? Okay, hearing none, is there any members of the public via Zoom who wish to speak about an item not on the agenda?
Not seeing any.
Not seeing any. Okay. Great. Then we'll move on from that, and we'll move on to item number 3. To approve the minutes of the November 14th meeting. Are there any changes or additions to the meeting minutes from November 14th?
Bob,
That's the microphone there.
okay, wonderful. I do have some changes, and if with your permission, if we can pass that to the end, it might be more fruitful.
I'm sorry, what, the end of the meeting?
Yes, as a final item.
Okay, I guess. We can do that. Okay, committee member reports. Are there any members of the committee who want to report on anything? Okay.
I do.
Okay.
And they had a meeting with the town manager. And the town manager, after the last town council meeting that dealt with the Paradise Drive Complete Streets project, wanted to emphasize to the members of the BPAC that if we have a situation where members of the BPAC are coming to a town council meeting to voice an opinion, it's very important for us to clarify that while we may have a position with the town on the BPAC, when we speak at town council meeting, we're speaking as individuals. And it's something that I jumped over, and he would like us to essentially say we serve on the BPAC. However, our comments tonight are as individuals. And I thought that was good clarification.
Okay, great. Thank you very much. Any other committee member reports? Okay, hearing none, we will move on to the meeting items, project updates. First one is.
Sorry, we did have a public comment come in. Do you mind if
we kind of closed public comment, but can't really do it. We got to keep moving. Okay. Let's move on to Hart Street Connector Path project updates. Who's got that?
Great. Well,
RJ.
thank you, Chair Ravazio, members of BPAC. So today we're happy to bring forward this project. It's been in the CIP program for a couple years now. We did receive $400,000 in grant funds through TAM years ago, and it's made its way to the top. So we had a successful initial workshop at the site. Had some good attendance, in particular from many of the neighbors and residents. And we have Becky Dower from PKF Engineers and Precy from formerly Precy Transportation, and he can remind me what his new company name is. And they'll be walking us through kind of some of the project description, existing conditions, and kind of where we are on the process. And obviously we want to engage you all and get all your feedback and thoughts on you know, what we want to do moving forward. So with that, I'm going to turn it over to Becky Dowler.
All right, thank you, RJ. I'm going to go ahead and share my screen. I have a PowerPoint presentation that I'd like to walk the group through. All right, can someone give me a thumbs up? Are you able to see my screen? All right, beautiful. So as RJ said, we're here to present the Hart Street Connector Path project to the BPAC. Excuse me. So a little bit of background about this project. So this project, it aims to formalize a connection between the neighborhood near Hart Street with the adjacent multi-use path. There is currently just a dirt path that connects Hart Street to the bike path. And so we're looking to make a more permanent formal connection there that's accessible to all types of users. Along with that, we are looking at making some improvements to the existing intersection of Hart Street and Pepper Avenue and Palm Avenue. We'll take a look at that in a minute, but look at making some improvements to streamline traffic through there and control traffic flow. We envision these improvements are generally going to be in line with sidewalks. They could be shared use paths, maybe bike lanes, and striping to help accomplish this goal. So the overall project goals, they include, as I noted, formalizing a connection to the pathway so that we can get users of all abilities, all types of users from the Hart Street neighborhood up to the pathway. We are also looking to make improvements to control cyclist speed and cyclist path of travel to promote safety of cyclists coming down the hill from the bike path into the Hart Street neighborhood. And we want to improve vehicle circulation and traffic calming at that intersection.
And Becky, if I may jump in on that. So it was a little bit of a coincidence, but I think also just a really good timing in trying to make this, you know, a complete project, if you will. I want to say 9 months ago or so, I was contacted by a dozen or so neighbors on Palm with concerns about mainly bypass traffic, I would call it, traffic that was kind of coming off Magnolia using back streets and coming through Palm, and they were concerned about just, you know, noticing increased volumes and at that time speed. And so it makes sense, especially we're formalizing this connection to make that part of this project to really see how we can improve that overall circulation and movement, the various movements. We did some speed data, and I'm going to let David Precy speak to that as well as part of his kind of existing conditions with regards to traffic. Go ahead, Becky.
So we are here today to get some feedback from the BPAC on how to move this project forward. We had conducted an initial outreach with the neighbors to get some feedback on what they thought the project needs were and what they thought the project improvements might entail. And so we'd like to share that initial feedback with the BPAC and then get some of your feedback as well so that we can take all this information and fold this into a design for this project. All right, so the existing conditions review, you know, as RJ noted, I'm going to tag team this with David Precy. I'm going to focus primarily on reviewing the existing conditions as they pertain to Hart Street and the bike connector, and then I'll turn it over to David so that he can talk about some of the existing conditions in the roadway. All right, so our project site is, whoops, back up. Our project site is involving Palm Avenue, Pepper Avenue, and Hart Street, this greater intersection here, as well as Hart Street, with the goal of making a connection between Hart Street and the bike route here. So there's an existing informal, sort of a goat trail path that connects Hart Street to the bike route. So we know that this is a popular path of travel for walkers and for cyclists. This is well defined. However, it's a very narrow, steep path. And if we're going to make improvements, they do need to be accessible. So we need ADA compliance for any improvements that we make out here. Some things to note regarding the existing conditions. this existing path, this goat trail that's been blazed, it actually cuts through the corner of private property. You can see these dashed lines here. These represent the property lines. So there is an encroachment into the property there. Interestingly enough, the owner of this property actually has established their fence at the same angle to facilitate, the continuation of that path. But nonetheless, it's on private property currently. There's a lot of grade out here. There's a huge grade differential between the bike route and Hart Street. It's about 11 or 12 feet of elevation difference, hence the steep nature of that existing path and some of the challenges around getting accessible access between Hart Street and the path. Other challenges that we need to be aware of is there's a number of trees out here. Many of them are pretty small trees. They're under 4 inches in diameter. But there are some more substantial trees as well. So there's a number of trees, and we'd be looking to minimize any impacts to trees to the extent possible. There's also an existing small drainage way that exists back here. You can see with the arrows, and there's actually a drainage inlet here. So whatever our improvements ultimately look like, we do want to be considerate of that drainage way and maintain or make improvements to that drainage. So Hart Street is a gravel roadway. It's not paved. It's narrow in width. It's about 14 feet wide, and it provides access to the back of 6 residences. It is not a through street. It doesn't connect to any other streets. It's really just like, in many ways, an alley that serves the back of these properties. There are some private improvements in the public right-of-way along Hart Street. This is an area that is used for parking for residents, as well as for access to the back of their lot. So that's something that we do want to be considerate of, as it is used for access and parking in current times. All right, in terms of, I'm going to branch out into the street just a little bit here, but in terms of pedestrian facilities on the street, there are no pedestrian facilities over here on Palm Avenue. There's a couple of significant trees, no sidewalk. There's no sidewalk as we continue down Palm this direction. There is, however, sidewalk on both sides of Palm on this direction. And so as part of our connector improvements, we'd be looking not only to connect Hart Street to the bike route, but really get a connection between the bike route and the pedestrian facilities that exist over on Palm Avenue. All right, and with that, David, I'll turn it over to you if you want to talk about some of the existing intersection conditions.
Thanks, Becky. And I apologize, my camera is not functioning. I think you know what I look like. So I'm going to give you a little bit overview of the intersections here. And Becky, maybe you could use your special pointer there to point some things out. So Palm to the south to Pepper is kind of the main thoroughfare. That's the main road. We did some counts out here. About 90 to 95% of the traffic is making that movement. There's very little traffic that goes to Palm to the north, to and from the north. And as Becky mentioned, a few residences are served by Hart. There's no traffic controls at the intersection, but folks have noticed that traffic seems, in their opinion, to be coming through at a pretty good clip. As RJ mentioned, we did some speed surveys. The average speed in the vicinity here is about 18 miles an hour. So well below the speed limit, but still is through a corner. So one thing we'd like to do is see what more we could do to try to calm traffic a little bit. Becky mentioned the 2 sidewalks along Palm. There is no crosswalk that connects those sidewalks, although there is some pretty good pedestrian traffic that meanders across Palm to the pathway itself. There's also very little, there's parking along both sides of Palm. On the east side of Palm, you can see the cars that are up on the sidewalk because the sidewalk's at grade or a little higher than grade. It's a rolled curb. It'd be very challenging for cars to park on the sidewalk on the other side of the street because the sidewalk's actually elevated. But when cars are on the street, it definitely constrains the thoroughfare of Palm itself. I think one last point I wanted to make before I turn back to Becky is Hart Street, as she mentioned, has regular curb returns. It's not a driveway, and so there's this 4-legged intersection with an offset, with the offset streets. Does provide a little bit of confusion, I suppose, to some people, but again, 90 to 95% of the folks are driving between Palm Avenue to the south and Pepper to the east. Becky, was there anything I missed there?
No, I think you got it. RJ, anything that you want to add?
No. So I guess I would emphasize, based on the data we've collected, we don't view this as a speeding issue. We just view it as an opportunity to improve the situation, calm traffic to the extent we can through the project.
Right, moving on. I'm going to tag team this with David again. Again, I'll talk about some of the pathway improvements, and David could talk about some of the improvements in the intersection. What we have here are 4 panels. This first panel is just a colorized graphic of the existing conditions. So just a quick recap. There's this steep sort of gravel or dirt connector path, this goat path that's been blazed. This is about 11% slope, maybe a little steeper. It's well in excess of the maximum slope that you can have on an accessible path of travel. It's pretty steep. Hart Street, you can see this gray color here. This represents the gravel. It's not paved. It does have the curb returns, but it is a gravel roadway. And there's no real improvements at the intersection there of Palm, Pepper, Hart to speak of. So that's just a recap of the existing conditions.
Before we go forward, Becky, I just want to check in with BPAC if they're able to see those visually on the screen, or if we need to zoom in.
Got it.
They're good?
Yep.
Okay,
Okay.
excellent. The 3 other panels, these are 3 high-level exhibits of concepts. These were 3 concepts that we had put together just to get some ideas of what this project might look like. So these have not been well vetted. They're very high level, just to get some of the coordination flowing. So exhibit 1, I'll start with the pathway, and then I'll turn over to David. So with exhibit 1, we have the proposed connector path over here on the right side of Hart Street. This is really like the south side of Hart Street. This is completely in the public right of way. It does go through some private improvements that have been constructed in the public right of way. This is right up against like a garage and a parking area that this resident uses. Crosses Hart Street here. And then we have to have a fairly long running length on this connector so that we can get slopes that are accessible. So we're looking at slopes that would be less than 5% so that we don't have to have handrails on this facility. So you can see the meandering nature of it and the increased length of the path so that we can hit those slopes of less than 5%. We've also got programmed in this area that is for vehicle turnaround. A lot of the residences, there's about 6 homes that do drive back here. They have to either turn around in one of their backyards or their neighbors' backyards and then pull out. So we thought, including a vehicle turnaround, probably just a gravel area or just a level area could be appropriate for them. All right, David, you want to talk about the intersection improvements here on this exhibit?
Sure, and they're going to be the same, so I'll just talk about it once. To tag back to that turnaround, as Becky mentioned, the intent would be if somebody drives in to Hart and then goes to one of the 6 homes behind there, although I think there's only a couple folks do that. On the way out, they could turn their car around so they're facing back as they're approaching the Palm and Pepper intersection. So that's the idea, some kind of informal turnaround. What we're showing at the intersection itself are a number of things. First off, a crosswalk, a marked crosswalk across both sides of Palm, high visibility crosswalk with ADA compliant curb ramps. We're also showing bringing that sidewalk that's on the west side of Palm around and over and across Hart, and then ending it at about that but this to the north. The idea here is to give a compliant sidewalk, but also make Hart more like a driveway. There's very few drivers that use it, and this would help formalize the Pepper and Palm intersection more as a 3-legged rather than a 4-legged intersection. We're also showing the installation of a stop sign on the southbound Palm approach, kind of teeing it up through the curve. Again, the predominant movements are between Palm to the south and Pepper to the northeast. So retaining that as a through movement. I think those are primarily it. Again, so maybe a little bit of centerline striping to guide motorists through the curve and help them again navigate again from Palm to Pepper these improvements are pretty similar for all three exhibits. And so Becky, I'll turn it back to you.
Great. All right, let's keep moving on to Exhibit 2. Exhibit 2 and 3 are going to look and feel similar, but there are some key differences. So on Exhibit 2, what we've done is now we've shifted our connector path over to the north side of Hart Street. So we would make use of the driveway and the sidewalk around the back of the driveway to get folks who are on Hart or Pepper or Palm over to our connector. We have the same sort of meandering long pathway that we did in the first option, with understanding that we need that running lane so that we can get our slopes down so that they could be ADA compliant. In this particular exhibit, we have located the vehicle turnaround over here. There was just available real estate in this location, and then that prevented vehicles from having to cross the path to get to a turnaround over here is where it was shown on this Exhibit 1. What this does not do is this does not route a path through this private property here, so we avoid impacts to that private property. What this exhibit also does not do is it does not cross pedestrians over Hart Street except for at this driveway apron here. So you might recall in Exhibit 1, we had crossed the paths, Hart Street and the path crossed. Here they cross at the intersection. So moving on to Exhibit 3, again, very, very similar, but the difference here is that we are following more of the original alignment of the pathway in that we are encroaching onto that private property. This gives a more direct path of travel. We lose some of the meandering and the bulb out that happens here. This is also advantageous in that it does not impact that existing drainage. It's not shown on this colorized exhibit, but that drainage that we talked about, it does not impact that drainage. And it appears to have less impacts to trees, although the tree impacts overall are expected to be pretty small with this project. So this does clip the corner of that property. There would need to be some sort of an exchange with that property owner before we move forward with this project. But then the length of the path and the general connection of the path remain the same. I do want to discuss a little bit, just real quickly, why we've taken the path to the north as opposed to the south. There's a couple reasons for that. First of all, if I were to take the path to the south here, where I'm trying to highlight with my red cursor, the elevation actually increases over here. It's actually higher in elevation, so the path would need to be longer. It'd have more elevation to traverse. So it turns into more of a project, more project costs in that regard. Another reason why we are taking the path up to the north is there are several schools up to the north. This appears to be the preferred direction anyways, just based on where the path has been blazed. So we think that most users are trying to get from the Hart Street neighborhood up to the path and head north on the multi-use path. All right, anything to add, RJ, before I move on? Okay. So last week on Monday, we had an in-person outreach with the neighbors at the Hart Street neighborhood. We brought the existing conditions graphic and those conceptual alternatives that we reviewed. We brought out hard copies with the group and we gathered around and we talked about some of the existing conditions. We talked about some of our very initial ideas and we requested feedback from the public. This was a well-attended meeting. We had a group of probably about 15, 20 people who were very vocal and very interested in the project. So overall, great turnout, great amount of feedback that we got back from the public.
Yeah, and if I'll just jump in on there, just, although we kind of at times call it a neighborhood meeting, it very much was a workshop open to the public. We put it on all the various social media platforms that we usually do for the town. I think hopefully all of the VPAC members got a notice about it. That was our intention, unless you're having issues with our recent transfer to Outlook 365. And then, so yeah, it was definitely intended to be open for everyone, but also to target the folks that are closest and nearest.
So what kind of feedback did we get? We've got a lot of we've got a lot of feedback that, interestingly enough, all seem to generally align. So I've got a list here of feedback that I'll run through. In general, attendees preferred the path on the north side of Hart Street. There was not any vocalized support that I heard regarding placing the path on the south side of the street. So north side is the side that it's currently on. Neighbors seemed interested in retaining the gravel surfacing of Hart Street. Several neighbors noted that they like the gravel. They like that it slows people down. They like that it gives the Hart Street a driveway-like feel. It's not a through road. It really is in many ways just an alley to the back of these properties. So they were partial to retaining the gravel surfacing and weren't interested in seeing that area paved, somewhat out of concerns of people hitting higher speeds as they come down the hill from the bike path, multi-use path. There was a preference for having a driveway. Some members of the public noted that they would be interested in something like a speed bump to slow down cyclists who are coming down the hill. However, when we started talking about maybe making this feel more like a driveway and adding a driveway apron, there seemed to be a lot of support for that improvement. Make this again feel more like a driveway instead of a street. Many members who attended were interested in seeing traffic calming improvements. As RJ noted, the traffic speeds are quite low. We don't believe that there is a speeding problem. However, there's a perceived speeding problem just because the roadway is so constrained, especially with the parking on street. So neighbors and all attendees were interested in seeing traffic calming at that Hart Street, Palm Avenue, Pepper Avenue intersection. When we reviewed the turnarounds, the vehicle turnaround option, a lot of attendees weren't particularly interested in turnarounds. They said that they didn't necessarily need them and that they don't typically find themselves backing out of Hart Street. They turn around in their driveway or a neighbor's backyard. So they didn't seem like they needed the turnarounds, although we think that it's still a good idea. There was a request to investigate some of the overall drainage functionality in the back of Hart Street. Hart Street is at the base of a slope. The bike path is elevated up about 11, 12 feet. So it is at the base of a slope. There's water coming down that slope. So there was interest in having either this project or a different project investigate some improvements or maintenance to the existing drainage infrastructure out there. And some members, in investigating and understanding that this pathway needed to be, a couple 100 feet long in order to get these accessible slopes, they were interested in seeing an alternative along with the pathway, such as stairways, or maybe just like a shorter section of path that they can use so that you get more direct access if you're a pedestrian, as opposed to having meander up the pathway.
Yeah, I was going to add one more that I recall hearing. The question did come up from one of the attendees. Hey, did you consider having it go all the, start the path closer to, can't remember if it was the TJ's CrossFit gym or whatever is the first kind of commercial property nearest Tamalpais. And the feedback we heard from the neighborhood was that kind of defeats the purpose because they want to be able to get up to the path quickly and more directly. So that was the overall feedback we heard based on that idea. The other thing I would throw in is, it would potentially complicate our grant funds, and I'm not sure. We would have to look into whether that would even be an option to transfer them to a different location than what was identified in the grant application.
So what we need is some feedback from the BPAC at this point in time. So we reviewed existing conditions. We've looked at a couple of high-level concepts and shared some of the neighborhood feedback. And so now we need feedback from the BPAC on what some of your thoughts and concerns and ideas for the Hart Street Connector project are.
Okay, thank you very much. We'll start with BPAC with questions, then we'll go to see if there's any public comment, then we'll come back to comments. So first off, are there questions from any members of BPAC for staff on this? Yes, go ahead.
I have a question on the walkway across. You see the map, I guess is Palm. Is the sidewalk to the west, is that higher? I recall there's a few steps to get from the street level up to the sidewalk level.
Yes.
Is that, would that require more than a curb ramp, I guess?
We're neighborhood, we're not BPAC.
Yeah, oh, sorry, I'm looking at the camera.
Oh, yeah.
Sorry.
You look at it.
Oh, yeah, sorry about that.
Yes, I believe you're correct, but you know, there's ways we can, you know, engineer around that. You know, if we want to drop the level closer to street level and put a very small retaining wall on the outside, you know, we would study that and come up with a, you know, a functional solution.
Or RJ, sorry to interrupt, but it may be a little bit more to the north than shown on this graphic. So the grades come back down.
Yeah, I was under the impression he was talking about right on the south, yeah, that corner being elevated.
Mhm.
Yeah, if you look on the existing conditions, I think you can see the steps. Yeah, right there. Oh. A little to the right. Right there and go up. Oh, easy. Yeah. I think there's a few steps right there.
Okay. Any other questions? Yes, Cheryl.
I'm wondering, I assume the stop sign meets warrant requirements, but I'm kind of surprised because traffic volume is low there. So is it the volume based on the south end of Palm, the south, or is it the north? I mean, the stop sign is for people going southbound on Palm. And how does, just wondering about the traffic warrants there. Do you have
Yeah,
that?
we need to complete the warrant for that, but for doing a stop sign for a single lane approach where the other roadway stays uncontrolled. The bar is not hard to cross for that. And in this case, it's going to most likely have to do with right of way and sight lines. So those are some of the things we'll be looking at, Cheryl.
Okay.
Okay. Any questions, Cheryl? No? Questions down here?
Nope.
No? David?
Yeah, I have three. If it's known, can someone tell us what the budget for BKF and Parisi is for this project? Number two, I'm just wondering whether RJ and Chris Good got my inquiry about whether or not Hart Street historically ever accessed the town's parking lot behind TJ's gym, and whether or not making it more accessible is something that's came up in the town, town outreach meeting. And then my final question is the home that exhibit or plan 3 would cut across their property. Has that homeowner been approached regarding whether they would consider granting an easement?
Yeah, I'm happy to take that. And yes, David, I did receive your email. Sorry, I wasn't able to get back to you in time. I still playing catch up. There's been a lot going on and a lot of different things that have kind of popped up out of the blue. Yeah, I think one of them was I kind of made reference to about the neighborhood not, at least those that attended the workshop, the consensus was not to have the connection start at that end. So that's one little piece, but I actually don't know the history. We could ask around and try and dig something up. But as of now, I don't know. We did not or have not established contact with the resident who has the path that cuts through the corner of the property. But the resident on the opposite, I think both the other property residents of the other property on the south side were present at the meeting and seemed very, willing to work with the town on whatever the best is for the project.
And then budget for Greasy and BKF?
We can look it up. I don't.
I know. I do.
Okay, sure.
For BKF and Parisi for the outreach and design services, it's $142,175.
Thank you.
Thank you. Any questions? Mark?
No.
I just had one. Can you put the map back up again of the I'm thinking of the late great Cindy Winter here. How do we keep people from going back to the existing path? What are you going to build there to keep them from cutting off that big turnaround and just cut right through? Because as Cindy used to say, people are always going to take the shortest route through.
Right. Yeah, I mean, although, so Becky referenced that, you know, our goal is to get the grades to 5% so that we can avoid handrails and landings. And when I say handrails, it's not just fence barriers. It's, you know, likely some sort of metal rail with 4-inch, you know, maximum opening. So we could still put in a fence, a split rail fence or something like that to help kind of guide people or prevent them from cutting through. We could put in some plants, you know, definitely further analysis needed, but there are some options.
Okay.
And if you don't mind, I do want to remind that some members of the public during the outreach, they did say that they would be interested in having a shortcut. And so maybe rather than fight it, we could embrace it depending on what alternative we go with, and maybe just put in some stairs or a more direct path for those folks who want that path.
I guess, yeah, my concern is more about bikers just cutting the corner off and cutting through there, because they will if they can.
Yeah, it you know, I could envision it without consideration of that. You know, it becomes a mountain bike little jump or something.
Okay. Any other questions from BPAC? Okay, then we're going to open it up to public comment. Are there members of the public who wish to speak about this topic or have comments on this topic this evening? Okay, if you do, if you come up to the microphone there over on your right, although I guess the microphone's not actually working.
You don't need it with the,
Yeah, okay. Well, if you can just stand up there and if you can just tell us who you are and if you don't mind your address, that would be helpful. And everybody has 3 minutes.
Late to sleep, sorry.
Oh, that's okay. Me too. And we don't have an official timer, so I'll roll them, but you have 3 minutes. Go ahead. Thank you.
I'm Kurt Rodmacher of 107 Palm Avenue. And we enter our garage from the back of that. We turn around, fine over here. We don't need a turnaround. Just for the record, the hard lane did go all the way through. Used to go up and down. It was used as a dirt path for a lot of cars cutting off. But when they built the parking lot up there, they closed that off, and there's quite a grade and a retaining drainage wall. And one of our concerns is that when they did that, they made an apron that collects rain. The drain is at the bottom end of that. And the city very nicely responded by building a little bit higher wall. But if the leaves get in there, that floods and goes into that drainage on Hart Lane, goes through our garage. If it jumps the very rudimentary little ditch. So we're concerned that ditch is well connected and not impacted in any way by this. That's our main concern. Also, the sidewalk on Palm Avenue, as it approaches, there is a grade for 3 steps down, but as it approaches the end of the block there, across Hart Lane, it slopes down about a foot, and then there's a regular 4-inch curb. So that's at grade there already, as far as the crosswalk. I think that's. I think the plans look good, and people considered a lot of great things. So,
okay,
thanks.
Thank you for your comment.
Which plan? The
2 or 3.
Yeah, 2 or 3.
Okay.
So my name's Vince Durham,
Anybody else? Okay.
and I'm at 101 Baltimore Avenue in Corte Madera. I'd like to object just to a few things that were said originally. One was about the speed. I think it's important to remember that when the speed tests were done out there, there's a flashing sign saying that your speed's being recorded, and I don't think that that's an accurate description of the speed. My real concern is bicyclists coming down the path to a blind corner on Palm, and there being a pedestrian bicycle vehicle injury. And I can assure you that there will be an injury. I've spoken to neighbors who told me where they have had physical contact with a bicyclist that has come into contact with their vehicle, thrown over, so on and so forth. There was another comment that was made about the residents were given the choice of either or. I don't recall it being that. I don't see why it couldn't be both. If the path were to be structured further up where the commuter parking lot is. Lastly, there was another comment that was made about lots of bicycle activity down this path. I'd say there's very little right now. But with these improvements made, it will be an advertisement for bicyclists to shoot down there. So again, I have a real serious concern about an injury taking place. I just don't think this was well thought out. I don't think it's a good choice. That's my 2 cents worth.
Okay,
Thank you.
thank you very much.
Okay, I'd like to make some. My name is Dominic Stansberry, and I live directly across from that path on Palm Avenue. And I can reinforce what Vince said, because I can see that path, and we park a car, we used to, right in front of it, stop parking the car because we kept getting sidelined as people hit as people came around the corner. But to the point that coming down that path, I'm a cyclist myself. I go up that path all the time. I don't have trouble, but then again, maybe I'm stronger than some other people, but I can get up that path fine. But coming down that path, you come down that path, you got to watch it because cars are coming around that blind corner. Blind as hell. And the other thing about it is I have seen 3 different occasions, young children, they have the worst time controlling themselves. School kids use that path a lot. There are a lot of kids coming down there, come down that path across there. One time I was in the car, I stopped it because I saw this little girl coming out. She comes out, she hits the car and goes into the windshield. So fortunately somebody was watching, so they knew that it wasn't my fault, right? And then we had to get the girl, put her in the car, get her bicycle, drive her up to her parents, to her folks' house. That's happened 3 different occasions in the 15 or 20 years that we've been there. And it's gotten worse. This is what I have no trouble with bicycles being around. I'm a cyclist myself, but this is my concern. And if you put a speed ramp down there that's coming down there for people that don't know the neighborhood, and you get more kids coming down that neighborhood, you're going to have problems with somebody getting hurt. And I don't know what the legal things are, but I'd like you to know that, you know, if somebody gets hurt there, and I've spoken out to the city, and this happens, you may have some liability issues on your hands. And to create American Disabilities Act, to create new disabilities in the streets in front of us is not, in my mind, a really great idea. And I'm a huge cyclist myself, a huge fan of having stuff. I'm on the bike all the time. But thank you for listening. I'm sorry if I get too excited.
Thank you.
Good comment, Dominic. Thanks, people.
Okay, sure. I'll give you another
Very
minute.
quickly, Kurt Rademacher again. When we drive around that corner coming out of Hart Lane, from our garage, we slow down because bikes very frequently are coming down, very frequently. I go down it every morning. People come down fast because it's steep and it's clear. The new path is going to come down at a very low grade and come down gradually, and if they turn, that's going to slow down the traffic coming out onto Hart and Palm, in my opinion.
Okay, thank you. Okay, anyone else in the public wants to speak? Doesn't look like it. Do we have any online comments, Dimitri?
I have no comments online.
Okay, then we will close public comment and we will bring it back to the BPAC for input comments. Well, first off, does the BPAC have any further questions for staff? Yes, Mark.
I do have a question. Where are these kids coming from? Which school?
Well, they're heading to Neil Commons. They're kids that are coming to school. And the girl that ran into our car, she was coming from Hall. She was coming from Hall Middle School, and she lives up on the other side of Tamil Pius, up on Willow Street. And her mother, her parents were actually mad at her. She's not supposed to for riding the bike that fast. But that's where she was coming from. And some of them are going to there, and you know, who knows where they're all going. But that's the general direction. People coming from that way. But there's other people that are ignorant of the neighborhood and are coming down there. And I hope that Kurt is right in terms of this slowing traffic down.
I seriously doubt it.
I seriously
I don't
doubt
think
it.
it'll ever happen.
What I would like to see, if I could, even now, I would like to see.
Okay,
Okay, I'll shut up.
sorry.
It's okay. It's okay. It's okay. I got it. I know.
It's okay. Thank you.
I understand.
We're doing questions from BPAC for staff. I have one since we're talking about this. RJ, can you guys put the map up again? Or the alternatives? I'm extremely familiar with this area. We actually owned and built the house on the corner of Palm and Hart, so I know where that path is. I know it very, very well. So RJ, by creating this much longer and wider path, isn't that going to substantially slow down bikers coming down onto Hart? I mean, it's really taking them out of the way. I mean, I know one of the concerns when we first did this was that because it was going to be so long and so slow, bikers would try to cut it off, which is why I brought up the question of how do we keep them from cutting the corner. But isn't this going to substantially slow people down to the point these gentlemen are raising?
Yeah, that is definitely one of our approaches and what we think is going to be successful, right? We're reducing the grade from 11% down to 5%. We're improving the surface with respect to bikes that need to use brakes, right? As they reach the bottom, they'll be on a hard, firm surface, whether that's concrete or asphalt, that's to be determined, but less likely to kind of lose control as they're braking at higher speeds. As mentioned before, we can come up with strategies to keep them from cutting those corners. There was some positive feedback for the meander to also create them to slow down. So that's something just to be aware of and something to consider. So let me know if that answered your question.
Okay, so by your judgment, by creating this longer pathway, that would sufficiently create a level of safety and slow bikers down enough that we would hopefully eliminate some of the issues these gentlemen are raising. Is that correct?
Yeah, that's correct. Yeah, I mean, there was some anecdotal comments about people falling, and so I think this will reduce it. It's going to reduce the amount of conflicts, right? We're adding some, we're formalizing where the path is. It's just making it better for drivers to know where the bikes and peds are, and better for bikes and peds to know where the drivers are. So overall, we view this as a safety improvement.
Thank you. Any comments, further comments from members of BPAC? Comments or questions? Do you still have a question?
No.
Okay.
I have a question.
You have a question, okay.
On exhibit 2 and 3, where the path is on the north side of Hart Street, what would be the separation between the path and the Hart Street, the motor vehicle access? Is there going to be a curve, or do you anticipate a barrier there, or what?
I'll let Becky or David.
What are the options? I know it's not designed yet, but what would the options be? Would there be any separation?
Yeah, no, that's a good question. One of the aims of this is to make this an ADA accessible path. And so the ADA requirements state that we need to have at least a 4-foot elevation change between the surface and the adjacent travelway, or you need to have a barrier.
4 inches, Becky, right?
What was that?
4 inches, right?
4 inches.
Yeah, 4 inches. What did I say? 4 feet?
Yeah.
Oh, 4 inches. We gotta have a wall. 4 inches, excuse me. So like a short curb or a barrier between the pathway and a vehicle way, or you need to have those truncated domes, which would certainly not be an option that we would explore here. So there would need to be some sort of separation. I don't think these two surfaces would be flush. But we haven't hashed out all those fine details yet, so we're looking for some feedback exactly like this.
Further questions?
Yeah, I think by having, the grade change will also prevent, if we do keep it as gravel, having rocks and other things kicked onto the path. So just something to be aware of.
But quick question, what is the, I guess, how much space do you want to leave for Hart Street, like the width of Hart Street, and how wide can you make that path, the walk path? And the reason I'm asking is maybe having, 2 folks come in, one bike or something, or space to move out of the way in case a cyclist is coming along the path. Like, is there a minimum width we're trying to achieve for Hart Street for cars?
I could go ahead and take a first pass at that too, RJ, if you would like. I'll start with the width of the path. So for this to be a shared use path, a path that the bikes and the pedestrians can be on, we'd want something that is at least 8 feet wide, which leaves, I think, about 16 feet for Hart Street. Again, we haven't dove into this in like great detail. In terms of the required width for Hart Street, initially we were thinking that you might want to get emergency vehicle access back here. However, there's emergency vehicle access on on Palm Street to all of these properties that have access to Hart. So I think really what we just need to look for, our design criteria is just wide enough to get, a passenger vehicle back there. I know that there are some, just by observation, that sometimes there's construction equipment back there, contractors doing work. So we'd probably want to consider a larger truck or trailer, just make it wide enough for a vehicle like that to access. So probably 10 feet. What we don't show here, but what is, something to consider is, we could potentially take cyclists off the pathway at this point and put the cyclists back on Hart, and then make this more like a 4 or 5 foot wide pathway for pedestrians only. So no longer shared use. However, after discussing this with some of the people who attended the public outreach, it felt like keeping this as a combined facility would make the most sense, because there were some concerns about losing control in the gravel, not being able to stop, keeping on this pathway. It's a very narrow pathway, would help to also control cyclist speeds coming down the hill. And then this forces cyclists who are on the pathway, to go over a driveway. Driveway is not necessarily a speed bump, but it has those same differences in grade that will also further slow people down. So I believe what our approach would be is we'd want to keep this as probably a shared use path the whole way, and then narrow Hart Street so that it does have more of that driveway feel, and it really is just for residential access only. But that's certainly, up for consideration.
Thank you. Any other questions? Let's move on to comments. Anyone have comments on this for staff input, feedback?
So I'll give you my comments. My preference is for concepts 2 or 3 with, if we could put those back up for a second. Is that possible? I like 2 because it doesn't cross the private property. On the other hand, if the town acquired an easement that was in perpetuity so that subsequent owners could not object, and exhibit or concept 3 would be fine as well. Maybe there's a slight preference for exhibit 2 because that meandering has the potential to slow cyclists down a little bit. And I agree with both what RJ said and that there has to be some sort of curb or some delineation that prevents gravel from kicking up onto the paved surface. So if we can, when the final plans are done, make sure that cars don't kick up gravel onto the pavement. And I think that's my only comment. I initially thought maybe there was a reason to have stop signs at all 3 intersections, but I now see that seems unnecessary and overkill, and so I think installing that stop sign on Palm, I think is sufficient.
Any other further comments? Yes, Cheryl.
Yeah, I'm wondering, David, is there, the stop sign now is, I don't know how to describe it, but was there any consideration to putting the stop sign on the north side of Hart Street so that there would be a stop, where the cursor is moving now? Is any consideration for that, or why was that ruled out? It seems to me that would provide some safety for the traffic that's coming on Hart Street to Palm.
Sure, we could look into that. I just want to make sure there's no confusion about who has the right of way if someone stopped way back there, but we can see where that stop line could make the most sense. I see what you're saying.
Yeah, it's just a thought.
Any further comments? Tony?
Yeah, I just wanted to speak to the value of this connector, this path. Speaking as a resident of this immediate neighborhood, we use that very frequently, typically on bicycles, mostly because, you know, it's a good connection to the ballpark, to downtown Larkspur, to a bunch of destinations. But I was going to say, we use it a lot, and it kind of lost my thought there. It's what was I thinking to? Yeah, just the value of it, improving it, because it's very difficult to take other paths coming from the bottom of the hill. If you take the roadways, it's far too steep. You have a lot more traffic coming through. This is a little less travel for vehicular traffic, for cars and stuff. So I just think there's a lot of value to it. And I can definitely speak to the gravel as well. We have a youngster on a bike, and it's very easy to fly down there, and then you don't know the controls quite yet, and the loose gravel has become a bit of a thing. So anyway, that's my comments on it.
Any other comments? I'll just add my feedback. As I said, I know this area extremely well. I've been in many times and used on that property. I would definitely go for Exhibit 1 or Exhibit 2. And it sounds like the neighbors prefer Exhibit 2, so that's fine with me. But Exhibit 3, I don't see how that eliminates the slope. And you're just going to have people rocketing down that thing. I know the slope on that. And Exhibit 3, they're just going to come flying down there. And some of the concerns these gentlemen raised earlier are going to come right to the forefront. So I think Exhibit 2 is the way to go, because that's going to slow people down by forcing them to make those turns and come down the path. So that's my feedback. Anything else? I don't think that's necessary. I think you just don't give them feedback. If anybody has anything else. Okay, thank you, gentlemen and ladies.
Thank you.
Let's move on to item B, 2022 DPW accomplishments and 2023 DPW and town work plan. So, thank you. Thank you. Nice to see you.
Thanks, Becky. Thank you. I won't spend too much time on this. I did, hopefully you're able to get a paper copy that you can take home and look at this in more detail. This is just something that I've gotten in the, myself and staff have gotten in the habit of kind of summarizing the work that we've completed and then kind of putting together a work plan moving forward. This covers projects beyond multimodal. It gets into flood board and sanitary, but nonetheless, tons going on. We can lightly touch on something if you had a clarification. We can't dive in too deep, just with respect to the Brown Act, but really just wanted you to have this piece of information, and also on a broader scale, much of this and at a higher level was brought to council. So at the back of the packet, you'll see the council formal version here starting on, I guess I don't have it on my side, but it's likely the last 3 or 4 pages. But the other thing I just wanted to also mention, and sorry for sliding up and down here, when we look back at 2022, even when we set these work plans, we end up with surprises. And, we want to be nimble, we want to be able to adjust on the fly, but in particular when it's urgent and the priority is high. So these are some of the sanitary things we had to take on unexpectedly. And then here are several, ones that we came on more of the town side of things. So at times, these can really prevent us from proceeding further. So, in a lot of ways, these things that kind of jumped ahead in line slowed us down from progress on Hart Street connector and Echo Avenue connector. So the more we can stick to the plan, the more that we can deliver the plan and what council is asking us to do, and not have to defer or push back projects that are a higher priority because of, I guess, other interests. So happy to answer any questions you have on this, but really just wanted you to have something you can take home and take a look at, and feel free to email me separately if you have a question that's related to this.
Okay. Thank you, RJ. Just a quick glance at this. I just had a quick question. Do you guys need more to do?
We're big, and we're searching for a senior engineer. We've been searching since December. So we are also shorthanded. We've been shorthanded on our maintenance team by a couple people for 9 months. So, and as you know, it's been a historic winter, so it has been extremely busy. But I'm very proud of our team. Chris, Dimitri, the whole staff is really just done a great job.
Okay, so to be clear, you're asking us to take this back, read it, and if we have questions, we can email you after the meeting.
Yeah.
Okay. Thank you.
Yeah.
Appreciate it. And let's move on to project grants.
Okay. Just get this going. All right. So this will be quick, just going over a few recent grants that the town was awarded for several large projects. So the two we have are for the Paradise Drive Complete Streets projects. We received $2,056,000 from an OBAG 3 federal grant. So that was great news, and we're right in the middle of design. So I think we're on track to construct that project in 2025. Just pending some utility work from PG&E. They're gonna have to move some utility poles and things, but as long as all that can get done, then it should happen in 2025. And then the Central Marin Regional Gap Closure Project, that one has been sitting unfunded for a few years now, and so we received $1.5 million from an ATP state grant. So that project we are looking at building next year in 2024. And then the other one that we've been actively searching for is the Tamalpais Drive Highway 101 overcrossing, which is currently unfunded by quite a bit. So we're continuing to look for funding for that. And one other update that's not on here, the Casa Buena Complete Streets project, that one already had funding, and we were delayed due to a PG&E gas transmission line project, but we just recently received word that they're pushing that project out. So in turn, we are going to try and build our project potentially next year. Is that correct, RJ? 2024?
Yeah, I mean, we literally just found out. I can't remember if it was 1 week ago or 2 weeks ago. And we have a hard deadline to spend that grant funds. I think it's by the end of 2025. So we no longer can wait for PG&E, who likely won't do that work until 2026. So we know it's a project that's been talked about amongst our community for many years, and it's been committed, and we only pushed it because of the PG&E project. So it's 95% designed. At this point, we're going to do everything we can to try and fold it into construction next summer. But we're still evaluating or kind of analyzing how to actually make that all work, just given the news is so fresh.
Yeah. Next year is looking into like a really busy year. So just planning out all these projects that we have grants for. But yeah, that's our current status. So if there's any questions, feel free.
Any questions from BPAC?
Just one, would you describe a little bit more in detail the Central Marin Regional Gap Closure Project? What actually is going to be done?
Yeah, so right now the project includes on Warrenham Drive, we're gonna basically be improving the existing class 1 path,
Yeah.
widening it where possible and doing what's it called? Basically just like doing new pavement. We'll have to remove a few trees and then we're gonna have an improved crossing from Warrenham over to Nellen. And then on Nellen, we're going to have a class 4 bike path. So basically shifting the 2 driver lanes over, removing parking on one side of the street, and then having a class 4 path where bikes can go both directions. And that will go all the way down to Pfeiffer, and then we'll have an enhanced crossing across Pfeiffer. And then as part of that project, we're going to try to include micro-servicing Warrenham and Nellen, and then doing a pavement resurfacing on Pfeiffer. So new pavement surface on those 3 roads, which will be good.
Yeah. So and we have a project webpage. So if you go to Corte Madera website page and just Central Marin Regional Pathways, you'll find it. But yeah, that Sandra Marker Trail between Redwood Highway and Tamla Vista, obviously you all know, is heavily used, and it's basically going to be completely reconstructed and brand new when we're done.
Any other questions? I just had one. What's the gap underfunded on the Tamalpais Drive overcrossing project that you're trying to fund? How big is that?
I don't have the exact number, but I think, wasn't it like 40 million?
So as of the most recent discussions with Caltrans and TAM and others, they were successful, to my knowledge, in getting, I think, all of the IIJA federal funds allocated for Marin and I think Sonoma, all put toward that project. So they closed the gap. I think it was about $12 million right there. We just found out that our individual grant that we had applied for on behalf of Caltrans was unsuccessful. We had applied for 12 or 13 million. As you all know or may know, the town is kicking in $2.5 million toward the project, plus up to 500K in kind of additional beautification elements. So roughly the gap at this moment is 1.2 million, which may not have to be resolved heading into design. It's something that probably just needs to be resolved before the project is complete, is what I've been told.
Okay. Thank you. Any other questions on grants? If not, we move on to steps, lanes, and paths repair work. Who's got that?
I got this one. Okay, so.
So let me preview this a little bit, and then we'll hand it over to Dimitri. So I know this is one that has gone, I want to say 3 or 4 years back, about improving, stepways and paths, not just Christmas Tree Hill, but in town. But really, we wanted to bring these up to a much higher standard. We were noticing some of the failures that were occurring, and there were different strategies kind of we were using over the years, as there was downtime with maintenance crews setting them up there for this and that. But really, the reality is there isn't much downtime. So more recently, we took a different approach, and we had our field project manager hire a contractor and really just blitz this thing. And so with that, I'll hand it back over to Dimitri.
Thank you. Thank you, RJ. Yes, RJ said, we had our field project manager work with the contractor to, address these different stairs, lanes, and paths. Again, you can see up there in the image, highlighted in red is all the stairs, lanes, and paths that are known to be maintained by town. And going from left to right, we have the Spring Trail, Golden Stairs, Gene Bean Trail, Portola Stairs, Short Path, Ridgeway Stairs, California Stairs, and Hill Path. The I'm going to show you in the next slide. There's a range of different repairs we did from improving the structural integrity of the paths or the stairs to removing some of the tripping hazards that were there through sidewalk grinding. So there you can see some before and after photos that were performed on the various paths, lanes, and steps. And yeah, that's pretty much it for that. I think we spent approximately $20,000 this year just maintaining and doing those repairs. I'd have to check on the exact figure, but that's what I remember off the top of my head. So any questions regarding that?
Any questions from you back there, Carol?
The focus is here is on Christmas Tree Hill. Was there any consideration for the stairs on Chapman, basically Tater steps?
I think
What's the standing on that?
I can speak to that. There was some work done a while back on just kind of getting Tanner steps off the ground. We actually, I forgot which environmental consultant we worked with, but it's a bigger challenge. It's got historical significance. It might be eligible for the historic registry. So a much more complicated process. We haven't given up on that, but it just kind of has kind of been backburnered for a while. But and this kind of dovetails into the sidewalk pilot program. We also did want to, in some ways, and I want to be careful how much I say now, and we can open it up for further discussion the next time. We wanted really to hit this zone, which is also the same zone that we want to do the sidewalk pilot program. So we can walk away saying we've addressed, pedestrian issues for this whole zone. So we purposely had those done together, and I think it's working out well. Interested in your feedback, but we might, do a same approach as we move into other zones that may have steps, lanes, and paths.
Okay. Any other questions?
Does the steps, lanes, and paths project have its own landing pad, so to speak, on the town's website where these maps are published and updates can be accessed?
That's a good question. It's definitely something we want to do if it's not up there now. We're just a matter of it floating to the top.
Yeah. Also, and it's premature to consider it right now, but Mill Valley did a great job of two additional things, publishing the maps of the steps, lanes, and paths once we get further along. 2, they have great signage. And 3, they have a program where neighbors who are adjacent to the paths sort of adopt the path for doing minor maintenance and also reporting to the town the conditions on maybe a semi-annual or annual basis. So I just float that out there as something to consider once these steps, lanes, and paths get further along.
Okay, thank you. Any further questions? Okay. And I think we are moving on to item E, sidewalk pilot program.
So I'll be taking that one as well. I think the last time I was here was when the sidewalk pilot program had just been adopted at the end of 2020, early 2021. So this is kind of an overview of the different, things that we've done through the 4 strategies in the sidewalk pilot program that we have over the last 2.5 years. So starting with strategy number 1 of our sidewalk pilot program, we have the sidewalk grinding, which each year staff budgets $50,000 to be designated for sidewalk grinding and tripping hazards on various streets. So we try to approach this. Initially, we kind of identified areas that we knew had, a good number of tripping hazards that would benefit from the active sidewalk grinding. And now it's kind of branched into kind of what RJ said, when we're in a zone, we want to, we do our capital improvement project, whatever that may be. And then at the end, we kind of come in and clean up the any existing tripping hazards that we can with the 50K each year. So in yellow here, in this image, you can see that was 2020, 2021 fiscal year. We mainly attacked Chapman Park, Council Crest, and some, I think that's the main area for that one. Then 2021, 2022 in the orange there, you can see we did Lakeside, the south side of Tamalpais Drive, some grinding on Lucky and Pfeiffer Drive, and then Marina Village, Civic Queen Passage, and Westward Drive. And then this recent fiscal year, or current fiscal year, 2022, 2023 in green, that's all Mariners Cove that we were able to take care of after we did a couple, I think we did a capital improvement project and then the sidewalk replacement project in that area last year. So on our next slide, we're just gonna go over kind of the spending. We spent $49,983 in this current fiscal year to repair about 930 offsets by sidewalk grinding in accordance with the Americans with Disabilities Act. So it's a very cost-effective approach that we found. It's less than 20% of the cost to remove and replace the uplifted sidewalk panels. And we kind of just, quick estimation, we said, if we're gonna repair these 930 offsets, if we were to just replace one panel, which usually doesn't take care of it, but just for estimation, I think came out to $300,000 just to remove and replace it. And again, this upcoming fiscal year, we plan to do sidewalk grinding on the streets included in our road resurfacing project, just to give it that last touch.
Very good.
So on the next slide, we're gonna be talking about strategy number 2. So for this one, we pretty much set aside $75,000 to replace and or repair deficient sidewalks, and that's included in our capital improvement projects. So those kind of projects are the road rehabilitation, resurfacing, safe routes to school, and complete streets projects. Again, speaking to this year, $75,000 was deployed in the 2022 road resurfacing project, and we were able to repair approximately 3,400 square feet of damaged and uplifted sidewalk. And we're going to continue to do that in the upcoming years and kind of implement it where we're removing or replacing those trip hazards in our projects. And then this is strategy number 3. So this is where individual property owners can apply for a sidewalk grant to assist with, sharing the cost of repairing these tripping hazards as well. And we budget $25,000 each year. The town splits it 50-50 up to certain caps for the different types of work. And the different types of work that we have or include in the program are sidewalk replacement / removal and replacement, tree removals of the trees that are uplifting the sidewalk in that area. And then we also take on some amount of curb and gutter if we're able to, it's not just for aesthetics, but if we can actually improve drainage, then the town will actually incur the full cost of that up to a certain cap as well. So the maximum grant that any property owner can receive is $5,000 maximum. And that's with the different caps and the amount of work. So in the first fiscal year, we did $19,000 in grants. The following fiscal year, 2021, 2022, we did $9,000. And then this current fiscal year, we're actually up to $11,000 approved at the moment. So this is our last strategy. This one's been a lot more involved. It's where we kind of go through and we will identify a zone, and then we kind of express, or we send out letters and see who's interested in participating in a project where they do receive these grants. The difference is that the town is going to be bidding out the project to contractors. So we're going to be going into contract with the contractors. We perform the work, make sure, or we identify all the work in the area that needs to be addressed, bid it out to contractors. And we come back to the homeowner saying, hey, here's, what it would cost. This is your grant amount. You perform the project and then they reimburse us at the end. So our first year that we did it was 2021, 2022, this past year. and that was for Mariner Cove. Construction was completed in August. I think it began in either May or June of last year. The total construction cost was $129,470, and approximately 2,400 square feet of sidewalk was repaired and replaced. We removed about 19 trees that were, in the, the planter area, lifting the sidewalk and causing that. And $47,000 worth of grants were provided through that project. So we're going to show some examples in the next slide of some of
Let's
those.
get a quick question on that. Can you go back to the slide for a second?
Chris, can you go back to the previous slide?
So total construction was 129,470. You provided 47,000 with the grant. Does that mean that private homeowners pay the difference?
To an extent. So if there was, let's say, like 50 square feet of actual damaged sidewalk, and they want to say, hey, they're already here, let's do the 100, they would know in advance that this was included. But actually, I think most of that additional cost came from us, including some additional curb and gutter work as well.
Okay, so we're still granting and recovering those.
Yeah.
Okay. Trying to clarify. Thank you.
So going back to the, here's the before and after examples. There's some different ones there in Mariner Cove, and we received a lot of positive feedback in that neighborhood on a lot of the work.
People gotta love it, really.
You gotta look at it,
Right? I mean, come on.
I have only one comment, if I may, which is that if all of our projects were as contributory to the goodwill of the community, I support them.
And then, so those are just some photos. And then next, we're going to kind of go into the current fiscal year or so, which is we've kind of just gotten this off the ground in the last month or so. And this zone is the Christmas Tree Hill area. So it's mainly Christmas Tree Hill. Some lower sections of, Palm and Willow over there as well. And so right now we're currently in the design phase. I actually just finished meeting with the interested property owners this past week. So we're kind of just, putting together the work in a package and, going to put in a plan set and get ready to bid it out at the end of the month, hopefully. So it's projected to be about 1,500 square feet of sidewalk to be repaired and replaced. And we're hoping to start construction next month. So that's pretty much it. That was just an overview of kind of all the work we've been doing the last 2.5 years with the sidewalk pilot program. I think unless RJ and Chris have anything to mention.
Yeah, I wanted to add a few comments. I mean, first, just a big thank you to Dimitri. He's been leading this program. He's been doing a great job. Obviously, you see the numbers and the amount of impact we're able to do for $129,000 is tremendous. I do want to caveat that in doing so, Dimitri must have scheduled over 100 meetings with neighbors. So it is time-consuming work, but nonetheless, I think we have it set up right where over the course of 10 years, we'll have given the opportunity to every part of town. I don't want to hesitate on too much ideas of accelerating because it's just, I think, really constrained by bandwidth more than anything. And in fact, the way the program is written, it gives preference to neighborhoods that have volunteers. So that was a big reason why Mariner Cove got it the first year. And they had, I think it was Bob Bundy and Susie Beatty were volunteers. So I want to thank them as well. Given this year, there were no zones that had a volunteer. We kind of actually used it to pick off a zone that we could actually handle with respect to the rest of our workload. So we kind of, I don't know, I think on average, this one might be slightly easier. So there's a little strategy element, but we also know that over the course of 10 years, every place in town will get the opportunity. And the other thing that was changed in the most recent revision to the pilot program is we have flexibility as staff with any excess funds from any individual sidewalk pilot strategy to where we can use it elsewhere. And most likely we're going to use it towards shaving just because that's the most bang for your buck. So that's all I have.
Where's the 1,500 square feet of sidewalk on Christmas Tree Hill?
I think it's everything. No, I'm just kidding.
Good question.
I can't believe it. I walk up there all the time. I don't know where there's any sidewalk.
That plane's in past.
Very good question.
I think most of it's coming from the what's it called, Willow Avenue, Palm, and the section of
Yeah, there.
Redwood Avenue.
Yeah.
But,
Lower.
and again, that goes back.
No.
That goes back to our the reason why we really attacked the steps, lanes, and paths, and kind of just be able to, in a sense, put that one, that whole zone aside and say that we've done our part there outside of a large CIP project. It just made sense to kind of time those together.
Okay, thank you. Are there any questions from the feedback members for Dimitri or RJ?
Dimitri, on Mariner Cove, who was the person or persons who undertook the field surveys and then sent out the letters, and likewise for Christmas Tree Hill, who did the field visits and sent out letters?
It was me mainly. The field visit.
It's got it right. So when this came up years ago, my comment might be somewhat naive, or maybe it's a conflict, but I always thought to myself that the contractors who stood to get the bids had sort of an invested interest in maybe using some of their own crew to go out, walk the neighborhoods, photograph everything, indicate on their sheets, what the home address is, and then present that to the town for the town to then do its work, because in turn they get potentially the contracts. And so I just throw that out there again for, if that's even something that's possible, it strikes me as it would free up your time to do the work with the actual property owners rather than walking the streets and photographing.
Send some of the Jelanis out there.
I can talk to that a little bit, and it makes logical sense. I could see maybe there's a potential efficiency there, but really through the public contract code, any contractor that gets involved in design usually cannot bid on a project. And the other thing that we have a challenge with is, believe it or not, and I can't remember how many bidders we had for the last project, but the first project, we might only had one bidder. So it's not like this work is highly desirable because the contractors know how much hand-holding is involved. And in some ways we have to kind of push them and, hey, so-and-so, you guys do so much work for us. Why aren't you bidding on this? So we're kind of, at least at this point, approaching it to make it favorable for them to want the work so we can, get the work done.
Any other questions for staff on this? Okay. So we're done with that. Let's go to any potential future agenda items anybody would like to suggest for staff.
So I have a few. I raised the question about the cost for Parisi and BKF. And if it's appropriate, if the town manager can address the BPAC and tell the BPAC whether or not it's really within our purview or consideration, and whether we should even be thinking about those kinds of costs. If it's not something that the BPAC is expected to weigh in on, then that's fine. But I was struck with the amount of money that we invested with BKF and Parisi for the Hart Street connector. I think I'd always thought that that particular job would be undertaken by staff, albeit I can certainly see that staff is really swamped. But in any event, if the town manager can just simply tell us whether we should be thinking about that or not, that would be appreciated. And then also, RJ, a couple of years back, and you may not have even been here, there was a survey undertaken by the town for Corte Madera Avenue to consider at some future point improving the path with an ADA compliant sidewalk. And while that's certainly years out, I don't think anyone's ever briefed the BPAC on the results of that survey and what it all means for future consideration. And then finally, I ran into Bob Bundy, and I saw some emails where some neighbors were inquiring about the efficacy of having a railing on the new and widened sidewalks on Paradise Drive. The thinking being that the youngest kids cycling on that path might, without a railing, go into the street, and maybe if we can just have somebody look at that and tell us whether that's an appropriate consideration for the future.
Okay, thank you. Any other suggestions for future agenda items? Okay, hearing none. Oh, I guess we got to go back and still approve the minutes.
Mr. Chairman.
Yes.
Before we do the minutes, I just got, in my post-retirement career of substitute teaching for prep schools, I just got a call to sub tomorrow and I have to excuse myself, so I can go prepare my lessons.
Thank you, Mark.
Okay. Thank you very much, ladies and gentlemen.
So funny class work. Great teaching.
Tomorrow at Invictus, which is a prep school in El Cerrito, and then alternatively, I substitute at Marin Academy here.
Wow. Have fun.
I do have fun, actually.
Okay. Minutes.
So corrections, potential corrections to the last meeting. Page 2 that goes on to page 3 was a discussion about the Paradise Drive Complete Streets project. And that's when I had sort of lobbied for BKF to undertake an alternate design that would eliminate the MCDSQ. And so that question went back and forth a little bit. Minutes indicate that McPherson, Garza, Longinati, and Bartlett joined in that request. And then, Bob, you had said to RJ at the end, RJ, you have the direction from the BPAC. So it does not indicate whether you joined in that request or not.
Okay. Well, I did not.
Okay. All right. So that's exactly what I wanted to hear and see. You just directed RJ to follow up on our direction.
Yeah, I just directed him to follow up on the direction from the meeting now.
Okay.
But I was not, I thought everything was fine, so.
All right. Well, with that clarification, I think that should be part of the minutes then, because it wasn't clear.
Okay. And we get the minutes changed, and then can we approve the minutes as amended?
Yeah, with that amendment, I would certainly approve it.
Is there a second?
Second.
All in favor? Aye. Okay, so the minutes are approved. Agenda items are covered. I think we can adjourn the meeting. Thank you very much.
Thanks, guys.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Sure, Jay.